Hey there, everybody. It's Tom from the Orange Jungle Tree Sheep, and I am here with my friend. This is Sean,
Hello.
and this is going to be the first in what I hope is several of, very casual interviews. I have no idea what I'm going to call this yet. I do not have a name for it, but I'll figure it out
Yeah.
as we go along, essentially. So, probably discuss variety of topics, and I figured, a casual conversation is pretty insightful and can be, kind of entertaining to watch. So, anyways,
All right.
ready. So, agreed. Video games for
Video
one
games.
thing.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of games do you like to play?
Lately I've been playing Red Dead Redemption 2 because I'm
Nice.
home and I got my PS4 back. But when I'm out at school, I just have my laptop. So, like Minecraft, Hearts of Iron, stuff like that kind of thing.
Ah, yeah, nice. Let's see, when I'm at home, I usually use my Wii U because, I got a bunch of old Wii games.
Yeah.
A lot of Mario, because that's kind of what I grew up with. And when I'm at school, yeah, like I said, mostly got my laptop, play some Steam games, and also Minecraft.
Yeah.
Big thing for me, just, a lot of mobile games today.
Are there any good ones? I don't really delve into
Um,
mobile.
Depends kind of on what you're looking for. A lot of the older classic stuff, I guess, from when we were younger, mid 2000s, kind of is, a little commercialized these
Yeah.
days. Like the original Angry Birds, Doodle
Yes.
Jump, Cut the Rope, stuff like that. Sometimes I'll go back to those for the sake of, nostalgia.
Yeah.
I find that if you can, if you have some, other franchise or interest, that if you can find a game from that, it usually works out.
Yeah. Cool.
Mm-hmm.
What? Yeah. So you're, I guess, a Nintendo gamer then? Mostly.
Yeah, mostly Nintendo because I have not owned an Xbox or a
Yeah,
PlayStation so far. We'll see about that at some point.
Yeah.
Let's see.
You think the state of the company is going downhill lately with like copyright stuff,
Oh,
fan copyright strikes and stuff?
yeah, the Nintendo copyright striking, so much stuff has been going on for like years, and all I remember, there was a fan game called Pokemon Uranium from a few years back that got taken down. It's, there's so many other companies and creators who would welcome it, but Nintendo's really protective of their IP.
Yeah. What do you think? Like, is gaming going uphill as a trend, or is it kind of stagnating and stuff's being replayed and reused?
Well, past few years, I think we've seen a lot of remakes,
Yeah.
lots of big things.
No new big franchises have come about.
Yeah, at least nothing that's taken off, and kind of stayed around. We had a few independent releases, we can all remember Among Us from,
Mm-hmm.
In terms of gaming as a hobby, I think it's one of those things that is so popular, it's gonna stay around for a while.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, even if some of the companies are a little sketchy sometimes.
Yeah. Is that the consumer's fault for supporting bad practices in the industry, you think, or is it just greed?
I'd say that's a question I find myself asking a lot. Is the stagnation or change of some business more on part of the company or the consumer? But I think it's probably a little bit of both.
Yeah.
You know.
Like most things, it's a mix.
Yeah, the companies, their number one purpose is to make money, which is, kind of feels like you wish they served their customers a little bit better.
Yeah.
But, we can make our own experiences out of it.
That's true.
I think. It doesn't have to stop us from still enjoying what we've got.
Yeah, exactly. Cool.
You mentioned, let's see, a couple things you're playing on your computer. You mentioned Hearts of Iron. You into strategy games?
Yeah, I like them. They're pretty fun. You gotta, I don't know, it's better than just sitting mindlessly doing some task like a random, like a shooter video game or something,
Yeah.
where you actually have to plan and do stuff like that. So I really like that one. A guy was into Civilization for a while.
Oh yeah.
Those games are always fun.
Mhm.
I think Paradox makes a lot of good games, but it's hard to get into them because there's just such like a not a skill curve, but a knowledge curve where there's
Yeah.
so many intricate menus where you've got to like figure out how to navigate them, and even once you're like good amount of hours into the game, there's still so much to learn, which is kind of intimidating to a lot of like casual audiences.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Closest thing I've got to that is playing Plague Inc.
Yeah, that's a fun one.
Yeah, I have just been into that for a few years. You know,
Yeah.
I thought it was an interesting premise.
Yeah, it's totally epidemiology, especially recently. But yeah, it's a cool game. Is on mobile, right? It's pretty good.
Yeah, they have it on mobile and PC.
Yeah, it's a pretty good mobile game.
Yeah, the company that made it actually came out with another game a few years ago. Rebel Inc. is what it's called.
Oh yeah, I've seen that. I have never played it or watched it, but I saw it came out. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a little closer to some of the bigger strategy games like Civilization you mentioned.
Yeah.
Whole thing is basically it's kind of riffing or not or pulling inspiration from the Middle Eastern
Yeah.
conflicts from 2000s and all.
Global War on Terror.
Yeah, basically it's like there's a region and the war or conflict just finished, so you basically have to like restabilize the region,
Yeah.
getting civilian initiatives like infrastructure, jobs, stuff like that. And you also have to keep track of there's like insurgents who are going to try and stop you.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's pretty complicated, honestly.
Is it worth the play?
Yeah.
How much is it? Like $10, $5 on Steam?
I'm not sure. I played on mobile.
Okay.
I haven't bought the full version yet. It's under $10. It might be like $5.
Oh, okay.
But there's a free version where you got just basic stuff, and then you can.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, I'd recommend it.
Awesome. I'll have to check it out.
Alright, then we're at still got some time for this one. Cool. What do you think the future of gaming as a hobby is?
I don't know. I don't really think it's VR. A lot of people are saying VR. I still don't think it's for the near future that's going to take off.
Mhm.
Kind of cost prohibitive to buy a system and then something to use it. And I think the development investment's still not very high to make good enough games for it, where people are going to stick around any games with staying power. I think it's going to kind of go on a trend we've seen where I think it's been pretty similar since like 2015 kind of thing. Shooters are still going to be really big, I bet. But I think tactical shooters are kind of making a bigger way into the mainstream, whereas like even like the new Call of Duty releases kind of are more focusing on tactical, taking inspiration from like Rainbow Six Siege, stuff like that, making it a little bit more competitive tactical rather than the arcadey styles we saw late 2000s, early 2010s, sort of thing like that. So I think it's going to kind of go that way, and I think just the general person working a 9-to-5 job is getting more into video games than they were in the past. As a medium, it's kind of becoming more mainstream than it was, say, even 5 years ago when it was still kind of considered like a nerdy hobby.
Yeah.
Stuff like that.
The progression of video games in terms of kind of pop culture overall is really interesting to me. I think when you take a look back at the 20th century with TV and movies kind of entering into mainstream consideration in the same way, video games are relatively recent.
Yeah.
Especially like I mean, things could have gone down a completely different path. One event I like to think of is it was 1983. Yeah, Atari used to make a bunch of classic games and systems in the 80s. They were a competitor of Nintendo at that time. Their business practices were not the best, and there was actually a huge market crash in '83. But it was actually the original Super Mario Bros. In '85 that really corrected the market.
Okay.
I've been thinking about a lot what happens to a hobby over time based on an event like that.
Yeah.
I kept thinking basically like if not for that one game, at least at that time, we might look completely different.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally. Cool. I guess that was good.
All right.
That topic, I think we've explored. Unless you have more thoughts on it.
There was one thing I was thinking.
Sure.
When you mentioned VR,
Mm-hmm.
I was trying to think a little bit about like why do we have such a conflicting opinion, among people.
Yeah.
Considering it, I think VR is one of those things that like when you imagine, I think a typical conception of like the super techno future, people tend to think of VR as one of our like first steps towards that.
Yeah.
What do you think could happen if it does like stick around? Do you think it'll?
Well, I have a negative view of VR, kind of the allegory, the cave sort of thing.
Oh yeah.
Like sort of even the Matrix is sort of VR in itself. I think if people start fully dedicating themselves in like a VR world, it just seems like it's going to be a time sink unless the VR world then becomes like the main world sort of thing.
Yeah, kind of like the Oasis from Ready Player One.
Yeah.
Yeah, like that. I'm of a similar opinion, I guess. If we start getting to that point, it's gonna be like, are we not considering the real world enough?
And what I think part of my worldview is based on like nature, ecology, and the outdoors. And I think VR is kind of antithetical to that, whereas you're stationary in one spot seeing these different worlds where you could be outside exploring. There's so much nature has to offer in the world to see, even like in Illinois where it's kind of plain to some people's opinions, there's still so much that you can do and see outside. Whereas like why go into a VR world when you can do that?
Yeah. All right. I think that's a good transition to our second topic. So, ecology. Yeah, you said you got a pretty big interest in that.
Yeah, I think it's one of the most interesting things to me. It was when I started like discovering getting outside and stuff like that. It really, I don't know, it improved my life for the better a lot. There's just so much to learn more about it. Like you think you can reach a point where you're done, but there's just so many different systems, interlinkings, the different connections between everything. And then in regards to restoration too, I think the restoration in itself is going to make a huge increase. You see like abandoned industrial sites in the Rust Belt. Out west there's abandoned mining operations, huge fields of corn and soy and wheat out here in the Midwest that have gone fallow because of bad land management where the nutrients in the soil are depleted. So I think there's just so many like opportunities to start, I guess, investing in restoration, start turning these abandoned fields back into tall grass prairie ecosystems that are normally found around here. Yeah. What do you think about like restoration and ecology work in regards to like, I guess, as someone who's not really big into it, what do you think about if you were maybe taxed more? The general person kind of cares a lot about how much they're taxed, how much they're paying. If there was like increased taxes to fund restoration efforts, would you support it or be against it? Kind of thoughts on that?
Well, I have gained a pretty good appreciation for the outdoors, mostly because of scouts. Spending a lot of time camping and in nature and stuff. Everyone always talks about we need to care for our environment, but there's so many ways, like you were talking about, that it's just like, okay, we keep saying that we care. Are we really doing much to, to really fix the issues. It's you know, I suppose I wouldn't mind, you know, paying money to go towards that effort. I think as long as it's, you know, being well spent,
Yeah.
you know.
Even like in regards to big talk, especially in school, if you're in ecology and natural resources, is climate change, global warming. And I think it's definitely a threat, but I don't think the way to go about addressing it is carbon tax, banning combustion vehicles,
Yeah.
like crippling United States industry and electricity. Because you look at places that have done stuff like that, like California, where they have regular scheduled blackouts, where they've done in Switzerland, they've banned electric vehicles from the roads because their power grids can't support electric vehicles at the time. I think a better way of spending resources for the human dimension of it would be establishing resilient ecosystems that can survive and mitigate climate change, because like Illinois was home to so many great wetlands. It was covered with like pristine wetlands, and then industry and agriculture has taken it over. And so we have this dead land, this land where it's just barren, nothing's being used. I think if we dedicated taxpayer money and energy into restoring wetlands, it would be a huge carbon sink, a buffer for climate change, buffer for flooding, and then just for people getting outside is so many proven benefits for their emotional and mental well-being, that if we kind of took a human interconnected with nature aspect or approach towards ecology, I think it would be kind of beneficial to a lot of people.
Yeah, I'm of a similar persuasion. I think we're, especially in this time of, you know, relative technological progression, I think we're focused a lot on the potential negatives of the future. One thing that I have seen, not to talk about politics too much, because, you know, that's a whole other can of worms, but, you know, I remember we saw, or at least I've seen a few examples of people being like, oh, we have this many years before it gets real bad.
Yeah, the expiration date or whatever.
Yeah. I was thinking, you know, a model like that doesn't, I think, take into account as much, you know, the efforts we can
Improvement.
put towards improving it, which I think is something really important, because, you know, if we don't, then we might be facing a pretty difficult time ahead of us. I think it's important to focus on what can we do right here and now, you know, to fix it, because the environment is one of those areas that is just so interesting.
Well, I think like a lot of those predictions have a very pessimistic view of humans, a lot of anti-human sentiment. Like if we keep having population, the world's going to crash, there's not going to be food, stuff like that. But it really fails to take into account that through all of human history, humans have been part of the environment, stewards of the environment. There's this myth of like the untouched Wild West, or like settlers coming and taming civilization in the United States. But I mean, there were cities, there were roads, there were trading posts for natives throughout all of history. So there's really never been a spot in recent human history, like recent being thousands of years, a spot in recent human history where people haven't lived or been a part of the environment and been a part of managing it. Like even, I think all the grassland ecosystems in the United States were kind of controlled and managed by the native tribes there, with controlled burns and different stuff like that. So if you take humans out of the equation completely, the systems just go into complete disarray because they're part of the environment at that point.
Yeah, it's like we've been around for so long that, you know, a sudden change in how we're taking care of it would be, at least it would have a huge effect.
Yeah. Well, even like around here, people are kind of averse to fire because they're like, oh, our homes are going to burn down, our crops are going to burn, whatever. But in areas where fire is taken out of the equation, the ecological impact is devastating.
Oh, yeah.
Especially out west because of, I guess, fire suppression. Layer of thatch builds up, dead plant material builds up, sometimes meters thick in areas, and when you do get the spark, lightning or a campfire or something like that, those fires are so hot and intense that it's impossible to suppress them, and it ends up displacing thousands of people and destroying millions of dollars of property. So I think kind of changing the attitude, I think, is important. Like general public attitude, getting a shift in that would be very beneficial, I think.
Yeah, I think that is something really important for us, honestly. You know, when it comes to how we approach a situation, there's always so much discussion about how can we be, more accurate. But, I think this is an example of an area where I think a lot of people are very, stuck isn't the right word. We're very focused on the position we hold right now, and it's like, well, there might be some wiggle room to kind of expand it, a little bit.
Yeah. Well, what do you think about like people valuing or focusing like new technology to solve our issues versus like just trying to set the systems that have worked for millennia, like just trying to reestablish ecosystems, or people saying, hey, we can use these drones to seed areas after a fire? Or do you think it's like a mix of both where you can try to use technology to help establish these cycles again? What do you think?
Technology as a vector for change, I think, is just really versatile. There's probably aspects of both of those we could, use together, figure out what resources we can apply in certain places. I think there's not reason to lose hope, I think, for the environment.
Certainly not.
For the environment and for the human race, honestly, because we've been able to do some pretty crazy things.
Yeah.
And I think if we maybe just start recognizing that, hey, we've got the ability to change some stuff right now, we might be able to make some good progress.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
That's about it for ecology, I think. That was pretty
Yeah.
interesting conversation.
Yeah.
I just think it's, I don't know, even like anybody can get involved in it.
Yeah.
That's the nice thing. There's not there's not a barrier to entry of really of any kind, except I guess in urban areas there is a barrier to entry of distance to open spaces, but that just then emphasizes the need for creating accessible public land and open spaces for people to like do stuff outside. Yeah, but I think if we wanted to, we could walk over to the river over there or something like that and just enjoy nature for free.
Yeah.
So yeah. Cool.
All right. So let's see. All right. Time-wise, we're at 23 minutes. All right. Cool. Pretty good. Last topic, or at least starting point. Uno.
Uno.
The game where friendships are destroyed, although in my experience that's been Mario Kart.
Yeah, both are the same. I think Uno's kind of personal because you're looking the person in the eyes when they betray you.
Yeah.
Or stuff like that. So, yeah, I think it's a great card game. I think it's got a lot of staying power even with like more technology and video games and stuff. I think Uno is still going to be a staple of card games and stuff like that.
Uno is one of those, I guess, relatively simple games. I mean, there's a lot of things. I think there's a surprising amount of strategy and, I guess, positioning, for lack of a better word, you can take advantage of, but it's just fun.
What do you think about the Uno variants? Like, they make some like motorized ones where it like does some crazy stuff with the cards. I think all of those are just distractions from the core game of Uno that's going to be around to stay, whereas those will be forgotten pretty soon.
I think when you think of the thing that most people know and are familiar with, it's that core game.
Yeah.
That little nucleus, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, that I think that's going to stay around, and some of those other things might not.
Might fade into obscurity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Relative obscurity, I I guess, there's always those, like, little niche parts of a community
Mm-hmm.
where, people who really care about that specific thing might keep it around, but, like, the general audience, or I guess the mainstream, just keeps this part and,
Yeah.
maybe goes to find something else.
You ever had any like crazy Uno experiences or beef with people because of a particularly heated Uno game? Anything like that?
I haven't played a ton of Uno throughout my life, but I remember once when I was, first semester freshman year of college, just there was a group of people who were just together playing Uno, and I was unsure exactly of what rules we were using.
House rules.
Yeah, it's like I put down, I think it was a draw 4, and for some reason I wasn't able to, even when the person, like, 2 turns before me had just, like, done the same thing after the same previous card. I'm like, wait, what?
Yeah.
What's going on?
There's been, at my work, my summer job, the Forest Preserve, when we're on a break or it's too hot to work, we play Uno, and there are some people I know who routinely cheat at Uno.
Oh.
And who will have little cards in their sleeves, or won't tell when they have one card, or then I've done it myself, and I'm a little bit ashamed of it. Backdeal trading, where you go, hey, do you have any of these cards with the person next to you?
Yeah.
So I think I think that's part of the game. Honestly, if you're playing, you have to be aware that people around you might be cheating, and so that adds to the level of nuance. Maybe don't do that when you're with your family or something, but when it's a high stakes Uno game with a lot at play, I think you have to bring out everything you can do to win the game, because that's, at the end of the day, that's what Uno's about, is winning.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of games that you can look at and apply a surprising amount of, I guess, backdoor stuff.
Yeah.
Because, a strategy game is all about taking advantage of the opportunities you're given and analyzing, not only the potential actions, but also the ways that you can benefit from those certain actions.
Well, yeah, cheating isn't without risk. There's inherent risk of getting caught, having people go, okay, this guy's out of line, we need to team up against him, stuff like that. So I still think it's part of the game. If you understand that you're taking a risk by deciding to cheat at Uno, then you should reap the consequences or the rewards from your decision.
Yeah.
That's what's kind of nice about it, is no one's holding your hand through Uno. You're out there to win.
Yeah, I think that same thing applies to, honestly, a lot of card games. I mean, we have a whole conception of, like, gambling and such that's all based on inherent risk.
Yeah.
Except in that case, you might be playing for money and, a little bit more. Something like Uno, I think it's usually a little more casual, but yeah, you're there to win at the end of the day.
Yeah, it's not about making friends, or it can help you make friends, but Uno is not about making friends with somebody, because at the end of the day, if they're to the right of you or to the left of you, you're going to have to betray them at some point.
Yeah.
And I think, does Uno allow three players, or does it have to be 4?
I'm not sure. I think it's a minimum of 3 players.
3 is nice, because it's very personal, because I could be attacked by you or attack you, and then if our viewer was playing with us, we could attack them, or they could attack us.
Yeah.
And there's no buffer, because if we were at 4 and there was someone here, we would never have to go mano a mano in an Uno card duel or something like that. So I think the 3 is the purest form of Uno.
Yeah, 3, I've heard, a triangle is the strongest shape.
Yeah.
Yeah, because every point is connected to every other point. Like a square, the person across from you, there's always someone else in between you. So, yeah, 3-person game is something that gets just so personal. I'm trying to think of another
And then
example.
even still, there's the ultimate aspect of betrayal. If two of the three people decide to team up against the one, there's always that inherent risk, and it kind of leads to it because at the end of the day, if you decide to get teamed up on, I think it's very difficult for you to do anything of worth in an Uno game. And so that kind of adds to it. And that even ties into the cheating. If we're in a 3-person Uno game and we find out one person's cheating, I say, hey, why are we letting this guy run amok? Let's team up for now and then go after him. So, yeah, I think that's kind of the beauty of the game. I'm glad we're discussing Uno.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of games where the interactions between people is important because at least if you're playing to win or there's not, some kind of established teams involved, ultimately at the end of the day, your main goal is your own success. How far are you willing to go in order to win in some cases? Are you willing to, betray someone or, take advantage of the opportunities they give you and then just stab them in the back later?
Yeah. Well, even like choosing to team up with somebody, there's that risk that the person you team up with gets significantly stronger than you, gets better cards, and gets in a more favorable position because of your team up. And just because you work together to get one person like out of the runnings to win doesn't mean that they're going to be favorable or charitable to you when the time comes for them to try to win.
Oh yeah, that actually reminds me of something. Do you know Game Theory? I assume you.
I've heard of it. Yeah, I used to watch him.
Yeah. Well, they did. They made a separate channel for like film and TV stuff. I watch the Game Theorists, a good bit because I just like that stuff. I think it's interesting. One of their early episodes on their film channel was all about the Hunger Games.
Yeah.
And basically, for all of the the series commentary on class and revolution and that kind of stuff, that their main consideration was how do you survive during the Hunger Games? It's basically a strategy game.
Yeah.
They brought up the fact that if you and like 2 other people team up to take somebody else out, there's the risk of that later on as the the number of people gets reduced.
Yeah.
Those 2 other people are going to turn against you. So it's like it's all about figuring out what the right move is.
What strategy would you employ if you were drafted into the Hunger Games?
Well, I think survival is the most important thing first, because no matter what environment you're in, if you can't take advantage of the resources, you're basically going to be way more vulnerable than everyone else who can.
Yeah, for sure.
In the books, there's a few examples they mention of, previous arenas, and some of them have been really extreme.
Yeah.
With, water being like a consistent theme because it's so necessary. Honestly, I would be like, figure out how to survive, and honestly, how to avoid a direct confrontation.
Yeah. Yeah, any fight you can, I think Sun Tzu said a fight you can avoid is a fight you win.
Yeah.
Sort of thing like that. Whereas if there's no risk involved, if you just hightail it out of there, and if you can stay in the environment for longer than your opponents, then you win. And I think that's also kind of nice because you walk away more or less with a guilt-free conscience if you don't have to end someone else and it's the environment rather than them.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of, honestly, like, real-life games that are also like that. It's all about, it's a mix between those little small skirmishes and bigger plays,
It's like Uno with a reverse card is kind of a small skirmish or maybe a +2 is, but then when you hit them with the wild card +4, that's your full-on attack, and you want to wait and bide those opportunities until you really need them.
It's all about a risk-benefit assessment, What's the right move to make at the right time? What moves are the other people around me going to make?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I think that kind of encompasses everything we've talked about already. and just like general life and operating through the world, stuff like that.
Yeah, I think games are one of the areas that, the amount of interesting discussion and situations, I think we sleep on it sometimes. You know, it's one of those areas that like can offer such a varying experience.
Yeah, I agree. I think kind of games have gotten dumbed down recently, like especially the big mainstream ones.
Mm-hmm.
But I think if there was more of a focus on like even Uno is very intellectual at points, and yeah, different games you can definitely reap a lot of benefits from the decisions you make and like I guess calculations you make as you're playing it. You know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when you think about, another, I suppose, relatively simple game that you can do that same thing to is chess, honestly.
Chess, yeah, for sure.
It's, when you look at it from the outside, if, if someone doesn't have a lot of experience, you might say, this looks pretty simple, but, there's an incredible amount of stuff you can do.
Yeah.
I've been watching some chess strategy videos recently, and I'm like, this is way beyond me.
What about that dude who cheated? The California kid who talked with like a weird European accent. There was a big drama because he beat Magnus.
Oh.
He beat Magnus, but he got caught cheating apparently.
Oh.
Yeah, I forget his
vaguely familiar.
I forget his name. But yeah, he got caught cheating basically, which kind of like using a good chess computer, and he had a way to figure out like someone remotely tell him what moves to do somehow. And so Magnus did like a huge tweet and kind of a blog post.
Oh yeah, I think I remember.
It was.
I remember people talking about like the drama afterwards.
Early October, I think, around then.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Yeah.
I honestly I don't even dislike the guy for cheating because he understood the risk again.
Mm-hmm.
You understand the risk involved, and he failed cheating, and so he got caught. I think at that level it's extremely hard, and you have to be pulling out kind of crazy stuff to pull that level of chess off just cheating.
Yeah.
So, but he understood the risk and he got caught for it. So.
Yeah, someone who does something like that, it's on a bit unsportsmanlike, maybe, but like, I gotta respect someone who's willing to basically do whatever it takes, because, that opens up a relatively higher amount of possibilities.
Yeah, but I still am. My sense of justice prevails.
Yeah.
I am happy that a cheater didn't get away with it and win, sort of thing like that. But if he did get away with it and win, then props to him because he did. But and I wouldn't be any the wiser. But seeing that downfall is kind of satisfying, knowing that the people who are naturally skilled and talented and put in the work generally do succeed, sort of thing like that.
Yeah. We have an expectation of, I guess, if hard work is involved in something, if someone really puts in the effort, then they should be rewarded.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a huge discussion you can go into about, people succeeding and just so many areas you can apply it to.
Yeah.
Games especially, where the goal is whatever the scenario or the setup, you're there to prevail.
Yeah. Well, I think also what's kind of telling in games too, even you can put as many hours as you want. Like I could dedicate myself to any game, say, and there's always just going to be, almost always, I guess there's one number one person, but there's always going to be someone who's better, someone who's had to put less effort in and be way better than you at it, which is kind of, it's telling of life too. Like anything you do, someone will have done it better, done it easier, except for the one person who's the best. So I think it's still interesting, and that doesn't mean you stop playing the game just because someone's better than you.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's also sort of interesting to think about as well.
Yeah. reminds me of one more cool scenario. I think. Do you follow competitive Smash at all,
Mm,
or Smash in general?
I know of stuff like big happenings in it,
Mhm.
just from I guess trickle down into whatever other communities and stuff I'm involved in, sort of thing
Yeah.
like that. Because I am generally interested in video games,
Mhm.
video game culture, stuff like that. So if there is a big event or a big happening in Smash, it will enter that space a little bit. So yeah.
Yeah. Um, well, one story or at least one player who I think is very interesting. Guy goes by Hungrybox.
Mhm.
That's his player name.
Is he the guy who had a crab thrown at him?
Yes.
Okay.
So Hungrybox is a Smash Bros. Melee player who mains Jigglypuff,
Mm-hmm.
and Melee had a fairly rushed development to get ready in order to release for the release of the GameCube back in 2001,
Mm-hmm.
and the foundations of its mechanics led its competitive scene to really blow up during the 2000s.
Mm-hmm.
It's fascinating to look at Hungrybox's career, I think, because all of the high tier characters that are really considered to be good are fast paced.
Mm-hmm.
They require a lot of complicated technical execution, like optimal performance with like Fox, Falco, and those characters. It pushes the limits of what's humanly possible with
Yeah.
with a controller. Hungrybox mained Jigglypuff ever since he started playing, who is the simplest and most, I guess, least aggressive, more defensive of the top tier characters.
Mm-hmm. What's the yawn? It sleeps or it's saying put people to sleep with its
Oh,
song.
yes, Sing is
Yeah.
one of Jigglypuff's moves where, if it hits just a little small radius, the
Yeah, I
opponent
hate
falls
that.
asleep. Yeah, that's annoying.
It's hard to execute as Jigglypuff because you're stationary and then after you do it, I think you like nod off and then you're vulnerable to an attack.
Yeah, the strategy that a lot of people go to is a move that really cemented Jigglypuff as at least a good character is. It's one of its specials, Rest, where basically like you got to be on top of your opponent, and it's a little hitbox like right at the center of Jigglypuff
Mm-hmm.
that basically it's usually a guaranteed KO.
Because I've tried to play Jigglypuff on Smash Ultimate and I'm like, what's that move do? I never knew what Rest does because I guess I've never been on top of the person to.
Yeah, or not on top of, as in like above.
But like next to him.
Like you basically have to be like right up on them,
Mm-hmm.
and if you miss it, you're stunned for 3 seconds, which is like they can do whatever.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about where he's like nodding off. That's the one I'm thinking of.
Oh,
instead,
yeah,
Instead
yeah,
of
yeah.
saying.
Yeah.
The Rest is what I was thinking of because you're completely vulnerable. It's like
Yeah.
glass cannon sort of thing.
Yeah, if you're interested in, I guess, just kind of a cool story, I found a very interesting documentary about Hungrybox on YouTube. If you look up Hungrybox documentary, it's called "There Will Never Ever Be Another Melee Player Like Hungrybox." It's basically telling his story of, he was he still was and still is, a top player whose style of play was so different, and it deals with like the community's perceptions of him. I'm interested in Smash, so I thought it was cool. But if you might like it if you just get a chance to check it out.
I'd stay on the Smash in my room. It's nice to play regularly.
Yeah.
But yeah, Smash is good fun game. I like Smash a lot.
Yep, it's pretty fun.
It's like the UFC sort of where
Mhm.
someone throws a new style of play in or a new technique, and it kind of throws the whole thing off, the whole scene off.
Yeah, everyone else has to,
Adapt or learn.
yeah.
Because that's what happened when Jiu-Jitsu came into the UFC, or came into mixed martial arts, because Jiu-Jitsu kind of was prominent in the first UFC number 1, and people had never seen that style of play, I guess, for better words, and it just dominated. But now that everybody kind of expects that play style, it's very, very, you can't win anything involving just that strategy sort of thing. Yeah.
All right.
Cool. I think that's a good ending point.
All right. Yeah, you got any closing thoughts or anything you want to leave off on?
No, just thank you for having me. On a whim, I messaged you, hey, can we set up an interview? I'm glad. This is very, very fun conversation.
Yeah. I've been, I guess, looking to have more conversations with people like this. You know, something relatively casual that, you know, we can just discuss whatever.
Random, yeah.
Yeah, so, yeah, thanks you. Excuse me. I can't talk today. Thank you for just reaching out. Yeah, this has been pretty fun.
Yeah, you should get, if you're watching, message Tom to set up an interview.
Yeah.
It's fun.
Yeah, I'm, at least for now, I am available till I go back to school from winter break. If not, we can set something up, you know, virtually online. If that works better. Anyways, this has been Tom from the Orange Jungle Street Sheep. Thank you, Sean, for coming on.
Thank you.
And I will see you in the next video. Goodbye.